Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to dissect the nefarious relationship between the EFF and a part of the ANC. Because if you understand how this is playing out, especially in Gauteng, you might understand the sort of electoral successes of both parties come 2024. So, the national shutdown on the 20th of March. What is it for? It's not against the ANC. It's not against anything else. It's for Cyril Ramaphosa to resign. And Byron, what happens when Cyril Ramaphosa decides to resign from the ANC?
Let's look at this logically. Well, Paul Mashatile takes over because he's the deputy president, isn't he? I mean, that's usually the role of the deputy president, right? He stands in when the president disappears.
So let's look at that reasoning. Julius Malema has come out publicly to say that he will work with Paul Mashatile to form a coalition at the national level. Most importantly, based on our sources, the sort of coalition talks in Gauteng around Tshwane and Joburg and Ekurhuleni is based on the ANC in Gauteng and the EFF, where they put a puppet mayor up and then they take all the MMC positions. That arrangement is not something that Cyril likes or is behind at all. That arrangement is being arranged by Paul Mashatile, Panyaza Lesufi, the Premier of Gauteng, and Julius Malema himself. So you can see that Gauteng is a springboard for coalitions at a local level for the elections at a national level come next year. But of course, they need Paul Mashatile to be president for that to actually happen.
A lot of people noticed that the day before, where during the Tshwane, the Pretoria elections, Lesufi was sitting in the gallery watching his ANC cronies all carrying on like thugs and did absolutely nothing about it. He just sat there and kind of shrugged his shoulders and basically condoned what had gone on. Is this beyond the ANC? No. So you may say, well, why would Paul Mashatile be interested in what's going on in the Gauteng region? Well, you have to look back in time. Paul Mashatile was the premier of Gauteng, so he knows that region rather well. That means that all of the branch officers and all of the members know who he is. He used to be their boss, after all. He has his interest in that region because that's where his support base is. Ramaphosa's support base is nowhere. That's the problem with Ramaphosa. He doesn't actually have a faction to call his own. Who's going to save Ramaphosa from himself? Because at this point in time, he's running out of friends.
That's true. Not that he had many friends. And I think it's very important to sort of understand. Cyril and Julius don't get along at all. We have good sources in both parties. They both say Cyril hates Julius and vice versa. Cyril was the one who fired Julius from the ANC in the first round. Julius does see him as a traitor to the blacks. Right, this guy is in the pocket of wiping up the capital and all the rest of it. All of which is probably true, by the way. Like, we agree with Julius in this regard. So an ANC-EFF coalition will probably not happen if Cyril has enough power in the ANC to prevent it. But if Cyril's not there anymore, there's nothing to stop Paul Mashatile, who is pragmatically a gangster, to understand that a coalition with the EFF might serve him well in his first term as president of South Africa. So maybe the entire drama is playing out like this. Consolidate coalitions in Gauteng. Come 2024, maybe the EFF and the ANC both get to 51, 52% collectively. Kick out Ramaphosa for a terrible election result, and then invite the EFF right back into the ANC as if nothing has ever happened, and they rule South Africa together for 5 years until 2029. That is a viable strategy. And I think we can see it being played out right in front of our eyes.
Let's obviously consider the possibility of what may occur here. If the ANC and the EFF do partner, one thing we can say will happen in the very near future is that the two of them will vie for control over their relative areas. That vie of control will be who can steal the most and who can steal the fastest. That's probably going to lead to a big round of political killings, which we already see in various parts of the country. The second thing that we can probably see happen is that none of the council meetings will actually ever go ahead and nothing will ever get passed. Why? Because these guys can't agree on nothing. So the problem is then service delivery will get further hampered. What does that lead to? Well, that leads to probably 2021 peaceful protests becoming the norm. With that being said, what's the likelihood that an ANC-EFF coalition would actually hold for longer than a year? For me, probably not likely. Plus, there's greater emphasis on international relations. The international community gets to see to a greater degree what it is that's actually happening in terms of local politics. What does that ultimately mean? Well, it ultimately means that the ANC runs on credit. If the ANC doesn't have a credit line extended, then nobody's paying them any capital. Nobody's paying them capital, there's nothing to steal, right? And obviously, as we know, the ANC and the EFF are grifters. They want to steal. They want to eat, right? Is this an ANC-EFF coalition that can last? I don't think so. All the writing's on the wall that as fast as it starts, it will be as fast as it ends.
I fully suspect that if this thing does come into fruition, and it's not evident that it will, we don't know what the results for 2024 will be. It could be that the ANC gets 38 and the EFF gets 10. then what? Then an entire new paradigm opens up. But should, for example, if the ANC-EFF do get 51%, I mean, before their 5-year term, there's going to be a sort of sovereign debt crisis. The IMF's going to come in and sort of just rule the country for 10 years. Which might not be a bad thing at all, because the IMF tend to be sort of financially conservative, and they will definitely kick out BE and a variety of other things. So at the end of the day, we don't want to make it seem like the ANC-EFF coalition is something that's bad. It is bad, but it doesn't mean that it's inevitable, and most importantly, it doesn't mean that it cannot be overcome. As Frans Cronje said on this very channel, you just have to sustain it for 5 years at most, because by then there'll be such deterioration that there will be change, regime change, or electoral change somehow, and we agree with that.
So the actual current predictions occurring in the political analysis arena, such as us, at the end of the day, what will inevitably happen if the ANC and the EFF partner, various regions around the country will break away. That means that the Western Cape will probably get its independence.
Yeah, so ironically, perhaps the ANC-EFF coalition could lead to the enclave society that we sort of all want and that we endorse here on Morning Shot. But, you know, if the ANC and the EFF come together in a coalition in 2024, I'm not, like, terribly concerned. Like, what they're going to do? Take away my electricity again? We're already at the bottom, people. We just have to endure it for 5 years. When I mean endure it, I mean create the alternatives and build an enclave, which is what we're doing anyway. So is there a measurable difference from the status quo should the ANC and EFF go into bed? I don't really think so.